Ah, the sweet joys of being out on the water. You never quite know what you're going to see when you're out there, just like some of the incidents we'll see in this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. Our first story to make the boating news this week is going to take us up to the North Pacific, and it's going to be an incident just like we mentioned, where you don't really know what to expect or what you're going to see, but this one starts in the air at around 31,000 feet when a commercial airline pilot spotted these images here over the Pacific Ocean a few weeks back. And of course, the internet went abuzz trying to determine what it was. Guesses were anything from aliens to underwater volcanoes, but it didn't take long for scientists to figure out that it was none other than boats. They were actually commercial fishing vessels that were fishing for Pacific Surrey using very bright red arrays of LED lights. Scientists were able to figure this out by using global fishing tracking technology to see what vessels were actually in the area during the time of the flight. And here in this video, you can even see one of the vessels turning its lights on to begin fishing. But I can only imagine the kind of commotion that was going on in that plane when these images were originally seen by the passengers and the crew on the plane, as it definitely had to be an interesting sight. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to bring us back to the mainland and take us over to North Carolina, where this was the scene this past week when a 63-foot cabin cruiser was making its way through Surf City, North Carolina, when all of a sudden people started going abuzz over the radio as this vessel was kicking up over a 4-foot wake, causing all kinds of damage and mayhem along the way. Local authorities did eventually catch up with this vessel and pull him over, but once they questioned the operator only mentioned that he wasn't going that fast, not really realizing the size of the wake that he'd been creating. Of course, authorities also quickly realized this gentleman had no formal boater training whatsoever, which can be dangerous, especially in a boat this size. Of course, he will be held liable for all the damages he caused from his wake of the vessel. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us up north over to Maine, where this was the scene this past week when several people got on board a sailing vessel expecting a fun tour when things went a little awry, as can be seen here. The vessel that appears to either be stuck on the beach or the rocks is the Pineapple Ketch, which is a local tour sailing vessel that does tours around Kennebunkport, Maine. The vessel wound up losing power and getting pushed back into the rocks due to the wind and waves heading in that direction. Fortunately for this crew, they sent out a mayday call and a local lobster fishing boat happened to be in the area and quickly jumped into action, getting a tow line over to the sailing vessel and successfully getting this crew pulled off the rocks before any other authorities could arrive. Sounds like the crew that was on board here got the adventure tour instead of the sightseeing tour at no additional charge. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to the Dallas, Texas area and Lake Ray Hubbard, where apparently this past weekend they received some nasty storms.
Let's see if this makes boating news of the week.
Apparently the storms came rolling through quick and it wound up sinking boats and causing havoc on the lake. The real strange part about this one is even though there's damage to marinas and other boats, I can't seem to find a whole lot of information or news about the story itself.
So this entire dock, that building right there, is supposed to be right here.
But I have been sent a ton of videos and images of the aftermath from the storm, so we definitely know it happened, but I'm just not sure why it's not being talked about on the news. Apparently, it left a pretty significant amount of damage in its wake to marinas and vessels.
Okay, see this big opening over here? That is where this dock is supposed to be right here. But this dock is up against all of these boats.
As can be seen in these images that were sent in here, this particular marina suffered quite a bit of damage as one of the docks was actually broke completely free from the high winds during the storm, pushing it into another dock that can be seen on the left-hand side here, causing damage to not only the docks but the boats themselves. I'm sure we'll hear a little more about this as more information comes out. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to Aventura, Florida, where these images that were sent in here show a 75-foot yacht that went up in flames this past week along the dock. Fortunately, the local Aventura Police and Fire Department were quickly on the scene and able to contain this fire using water and foam. They got really lucky in this one as there were plenty of other vessels in the area that the fire could have spread to. Not only that, there were actually palm trees and condos right along the edge of the dock as well. At this time, the actual cause of the fire is still undetermined, but a full investigation has been launched. Currently, crews are still working on cleaning up the remaining debris and fuel that was in the water from the vessel. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. If you ever see anything crazy happening out on your waterways, be sure to hit me up on Facebook or Instagram and let me know, and you might see your stories over here. Just like Noam Harrell, Tyler Kolarski, Audrey Dewitt, Ben O'Connor, Love the New Me, Dustin Maggard and Noah Lauren did this week. And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and drop an anchor on the subscribe button here. If not, we're coming to steal your drain plug.